Final, as I say, she goes looking for you. She gets on that front foot, brings the heat, and she's effective with it. Won the Junior Women's Nation Cup this year, Russian national champion from 2021 as well, and she's got to follow all of her teammates up to the top step of that podium. That's the challenge. They've all managed to do it so far.
And her opponent in the blue corner, representing Ukraine,
Valeria MRSHCHERIAKOVA beat Izabela Pirvi of Romania in her quarter-final, then Samantha Reiber of Germany, both times by unanimous decision. And she will go about things in pretty much the same way that PANOVA does. I would be surprised if that doesn't turn out to be the case. And these two might end up meeting in the middle, which could make for an interesting contest. Russia against Ukraine, of course, brings that added bit of spice, and they'll be desperate to get on the board, Ukraine, to get a gold medal. They don't want to be overshadowed by their neighbours, if at all possible.
It's almost less pressure on the Ukrainian after seeing her previous two teammates fall, but there's also the opportunity to be a bit of almost a hero for her nation and topple the Russian dominance that they've had. The third meeting already of Russia against Ukraine in a final that we've had, 3 of 4 in the women's bouts that we're going to have today. Yeah, there'd just be a nice pat on the back or two, an additional extra high five or two going around the Ukrainian camp, of course, if MRSHCHERIAKOVA can topple the Russian opposition in front of her. But as you say, Andy, I mean, I wouldn't like to be any of these Russian fighters coming out now in the latter part of these women's bouts and the added pressure of seeing everybody else succeed.
So this is the 9th fight of the session, and out of 8 that we've had up until this point, we've had 6 gold medals for Russia, 1 for Cyprus and 1 for Romania. So we've got PANOVA of Russia here in the red, MRSHCHERIAKOVA of Ukraine in the blue, and straight away they get to it, and this is what we're going to see from these two. They both like to come forward, they both like to throw plenty of punches, and they're going to look to engage from the beginning. PANOVA just managing to find a little bit of space there. I think the issue here could be that they'll close down that distance, they'll shut their own space down quite quickly, and they won't have too much room to work. Good stiff jab there from MRSHCHERIAKOVA. If she can establish that, then that could be a real weapon for her, leading off with a left hook there. She does have a slight advantage in size. Good jab again from MRSHCHERIAKOVA. She needs to keep trying to pump that out because PANOVA will swarm her. She doesn't really jab her way in. She doesn't really have that weapon with that lead left hand herself. So MRSHCHERIAKOVA leading off with a hook there, but in those situations where they're just standing on the borderline of range and both of them are waiting for the other to commit, MRSHCHERIAKOVA can just be jabbing at that point, just throwing that jab, because it does look like a solid enough lead hand to me. Didn't see that much of it in the semi-final, but that could be the key to the fight for her. She lets a sweeping kind of left hand go there, didn't manage to land it, heading towards the final 30 seconds. There won't be an awful lot in this one so far. The cleaner punching, I think, has come from the fighter in blue. Good right to the body there, up close from MRSHCHERIAKOVA as well, but PANOVA has been very, very aggressive.
Yeah, and there's been some shots from PANOVA when they've got in tight. There's been a couple of uppercuts and a couple just around the side of the head as well that have landed in the melee when they do get close. It's very difficult to see at times how many of these are connecting really cleanly, but those have certainly caught the eye, and I'm sure others as well ringside will have seen that.
So there goes the bell at the end of round 1, and not very much in that one at all, I wouldn't say. These two are well matched and split scoring. So 3 judges go for PANOVA, 2 go for MRSHCHERIAKOVA. And that a fair reflection of that opening round. The higher work rate, the higher punch output definitely came from PANOVA, you would say. MRSHCHERIAKOVA, I wouldn't exactly describe her as sparing. She let her hands go plenty too, but their success rate was fairly similar. I'd say that maybe in terms of punch completion percentage, MRSHCHERIAKOVA's would have been slightly higher, but you don't win around for that. It's purely based on on what you land. And picking between the two of them there was not an easy job.
Yeah, it's almost like if you like the Ukrainians' approach of using the jab really well, then you're probably slightly going to lean towards that. If you prefer the guts of PANOVA, just to kind of step in and really get in close and what she's doing when she's able to do that. It's differing styles, and that may just be what gives you the edge in how you see that first round.
That can be the case often. You just always need to be looking for what lands. It doesn't matter what it looks like or how you do it, but you often hear people talk about that in both codes. Again, a good lively start to round two, and PANOVA is upped it a little bit here, and I think she might have just hurt MRSHCHERIAKOVA a touch there with a right hand that came kind of arcing over the top. Good start to the round here from PANOVA. I think she's just found her distance a little bit better. At times in the first round, as I said, she was possibly a touch over eager and just shut down her own space, but she's got into kind of optimum range here a couple of times. MRSHCHERIAKOVA's got to try and use that jab. Good stiff lead left hand there from PANOVA. Straight into the face of MRSHCHERIAKOVA midway through round two. And just stepping off here, PANOVA, maybe just trying to nick a little bit of a rest for 5-10 seconds, because she put a lot into that first minute.
Yeah, but so far in this round, that jab hasn't really been there for MRSHCHERIAKOVA. She throws a left there just to try and land something on the Russian, but particularly in the early exchanges of that round as well. There's no sign of that effective jab, and PANOVA was more than happy to keep rumbling forward and start to assert herself in this one. And then it has been a almost slightly more tentative outlook from the fighter in blue as this round's gone on, although she's having a little bit of a reply there.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. She's just been put in a place a little bit in this second round. She's been blitzed by PANOVA here, and I think she's felt some of these too. At the start of the round, I'm convinced over on the far side of the ring that a couple of those punches, particularly a right hand that, as I say, came just kind of angling in over the top, got to her, and she felt it, and that it's reflected in the scores there. 10-9s all the way around for PANOVA, and I think it was that kind of volley towards the start of the round that just sent her into her shell a little bit, MRSHCHERIAKOVA, and that's very, very common when a fighter gets hurt. They become more circumspect quite simply. That could have been it there, actually, the replay.
Yeah, we just saw that right hand of PANOVA, but it was interesting, not two blows straight after that. There was a nice uppercut that caught the Russian, but it just didn't affect her in the same way that right hand round the side of the head really caught MRSHCHERIAKOVA. It was an uppercut from the right of the Ukrainian fighter that was almost thrown in desperation to try and weather the storm and get her opponent off her, and it did connect at least and do the job.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Sometimes you see a fighter throw and there's not an enormous amount of conviction about it. Their punches thrown sometimes in desperation, really, to try and keep the other fighter off them, and that's kind of what this looks like at the minute there. At the start of the round, PANOVA again just going after MRSHCHERIAKOVA, who'd kind of half turned, and the referee got involved. She's got a bit between the teeth here, the Russian fighter. I think she feels that she's got the edge here on MRSHCHERIAKOVA, and that she can really put it on it and do some damage in this final round, and that's what she's looking to do. She's a spiteful kind of a fighter by the look of it, and you need that.
Yeah, the only times just in this early part of this final round that MRSHCHERIAKOVA, until that little body shot, she has connected with the desperation punches when she was being forced back and forced back.
The referee's taking a point there for holding, so that will widen the gap between these two midway through the third and final round. Nice right hand to the body there from MRSHCHERIAKOVA. She can do some good work at that kind of mid-range, almost up close. She makes a little bit of room. She leans in a bit, but then does make a touch of room for those punches. But as the fight's worn on, more and more the jab has just left the equation, and again there she's kind of half turned and walked off towards the neutral corner, and PANOVA was still throwing. She will keep punching until she was told expressly to stop, and she's looking a little bit beleaguered in there, MRSHCHERIAKOVA. PANOVA has just proved to be too much for her after a tight opening round where I thought there were possibilities for the Ukrainian, but the work rate from PANOVA has been absolutely immense.
She looked livid that she had to stop punching at times as well after being separated for a moment by the officials as the bell goes. She just really looked determined and almost angry throughout that whole fight, the Russian fighter. And
she's got the win. She's got the win. There is absolutely no doubt about that. There's a point taken in that third and final round as well, so that's going to be another gold medal for the Russian team. They are unstoppable at the moment. They really are. Quickly to the centre of the ring. She's taking a little bit of time to get the gloves off, to get the head guard off there over in the blue corner, MRSHCHERIAKOVA. She knows which way this one has gone, and she just found herself overwhelmed, basically, in the second and third rounds.
The winner of this bout by unanimous decision is a boxer from red corner, PANOVA DARIA, Russia.
Business done for the Russians. PANOVA takes it quite comfortably. 10s across the board as well in that final round, kind of as we were expecting here at ringside. The way she was ready to go for the raise of the hands after it just felt like, yeah, this is what I came here to do. This is the job done. Now let's go home, get done. And I've done it very effectively and efficiently. And she dealt with the minimal number of blows that she had to take in that first round from the Ukrainian, who was certainly in it for after the first 2 minutes of the bout, but after that, and the aggressive start to the second. And I suppose it's difficult for a fighter as well. Once you go into that shell slightly so early on in a round, it takes time to get out of it, especially when your opponent knows and feels and senses that as well.
Yeah, she just couldn't find a way back onto level terms once PANOVA had really got to her at the start of the second round. There were some punches that got through there at the start of the second that she definitely felt. There's some power there, and from that point onwards it was a very difficult job. But a lot of the time she had her head bowed a little bit, still throwing, but really she cut a slightly, as I said, beleaguered figure in rounds 2 and round 3, because she came up against a